I'm Tom Teat. Welcome to the show. We're going to do a show in 3 parts, Flying into Your Future. On the first show here, we're going to talk about the airplane, what it is, the different parts of the airplane, and how it works. And even though we're focusing on an airplane, you should know that everything we're talking about applies to all flight vehicles. Flight is lift. We're just using one example of a lift mobile. In the next show, we're going to talk about aviation futures. There's a lot more future in aviation than you can think of. And the last show, which is going to be the most fun show, for me anyway, we're going to talk about sport aviation. And the plane that you'll see later in this show will probably highlight a little bit more, and it's aerobatics. But the world of sport aviation is also much larger than you can think. And we have a lot of examples of sport aviators here in Erie, Pennsylvania. We're here right now in Erie, Pennsylvania, Erie Airport. Nice place. Behind me is a Cessna 172, the same exact model of aircraft used by Vicki Van Meter just a couple of weeks ago to fly from Bangor, Maine, all the way to San Diego, all by herself. So it's kind of neat. We're going to be able to see the exact aircraft that she used inside and out to get an idea of what the airplane is that she used. We're going to walk around the airplane a little bit to see how the airplane actually works. The airplanes that you'll see are basically all the same. They have a cabin where we sit, of course, and where the pilots fly the airplane, but the airplane is really a structure. And even though you may see airplanes that kind of look a little bit differently, for example, the one behind me is a high-wing airplane. Usually Cessnas are high-wing airplanes. The other half of the world is a low-wing airplane. They are often Pipers or Beechcraft, for example. But this is a Cessna 172. This happens to be an interesting model of Cessna 172 because it's a 195 horsepower Cessna, a little bit higher powered than the normal 172. And interestingly enough, this is one of the owners of this airplane is one of the supervisors of our Milcreek Township. His son, Brian Martin, has learned how to fly in this airplane. He has flown enough in this airplane to go on and is now a pilot with TWA Express. So let's get started and then let's walk around the airplane.
The air that goes, when it goes through, it basically slices the air, and the air that goes over the top of the wing has to move faster to keep up with the air on the bottom.
The wing is what the airplane is all about. The wing is how we get up and fly. Wings are what produce the lift to get us off the ground and through the air. How do wings work? We all know when we put our hand outside our car window, we're able to go up and down with the airflow depending on the angle of our hand. And to a great degree, that's how the wing is working too. But there are some very interesting physics about how a wing works. You have a bunch of air coming at the front of the wing. The air that goes over the top of the wing ends up going a little faster than the air going over the bottom of the wing. Just curved gadgets do that. You have a curved surface that causes the airspeed over that surface to speed up. And when air speeds up, it aligns, the molecules actually align such that you get a lowering of air pressure over the top of the wing as compared to the bottom of the wing. What that confers is lift. Because of lower pressure, you can imagine that the plane is almost being sucked up into the air. But more important than that is the decision that air molecules have in front of the wing. They can go below the wing or above the wing. Well, with lower pressure on top of the wing, more air decides to go over the wing. Well, that creates more air flowing over the top of the wing. As the air speeds up over the top of the wing, it is getting aligned. So the pressure goes down. So that's why there's less pressure on top of the wing. So that's lift. The cause of lift is the air, as it reaches the tail of the wing surface, is actually forced down. And like one can learn in physics, every action has an opposite reaction. A force down produces a force up, and that is literally what lift is. One thing that you'll see in the wing as we take a more panning view of the wing is that you'll see a certain V structure to the wing. And that's because of something we find out, that if we put that kind of structure, which we have a big word for it called dihedral, that confers a stability, and it helps the plane, other than the pilot, it helps the plane naturally be stable and to stay essentially in an upright position. So we have a lot of different simple little tricks to make an airplane do what we want it to do. While we're up here, let's talk about the structure of the airplane. The structure of the wing is very similar to the structure of the rest of the airplane in terms of the surface. This airplane is a metal airplane, aluminum, aviation grade aluminum, but aluminum nonetheless. We call it a skin. Underneath the wing in particular, there is actual structure. The lengthwise, kind of span-wise structure underneath the skin of the wing are called spars. The spars are basically connected with ribs. Even though these structures are fairly light, this aluminum is fairly thin, it's surprising how strong aircrafts are in general, and particularly the wing. So these are very, very strong structures. A little evolution has happened over the years. Initially, wings, the basic structure was the same, but the ribs and spars were made out of wood instead of aluminum, and the skins were made out of a fabric, either a Dacron type of fabric or a cotton fabric. So most of the older airplanes you'll see built in the 20s or 30s or 40s have that kind of structure. Sometime during the 40s, as aircraft numbers increased and more people were leaving their airplanes outside, we wanted to have more weather resistance. So metal provides much better weather resistance than plain old fabric. And when I say fabric, it is literally the fabric that we're wearing. It's hard to see these ailerons, the folks up front can see them, but I actually push this aileron down. This aileron goes down, this one aileron goes up. What the bottom line is basically when you get a control surface and you put it down, you create lift in the opposite direction. This is the aileron. What an aileron really does is it changes the shape of the wing. By changing the shape of the wing, you can change the lift produced by the wing. So, from the cockpit, you turn the steering wheel, or stick, or control column, to the left. That causes the right aileron that we're at right now to go down. This downward deflection of the aileron generates a lower pressure on top of the wing. Lower pressure on top of the wing results in lift going up. Therefore, right aileron down means right wing goes up because of more lift. At the same time as the right aileron going down, the left aileron goes up, basically conferring a bit of redundancy. When an aileron goes up, it causes a decrease of lift in that wing, and it goes down. So when we do turn a left, for example, the right aileron is down, the left aileron is up, both agreeing with each other to turn the airplane to the left. I just activated the flaps. The flaps are interesting devices. Anybody that has flown an airplane, during the landing phase, you've seen the flaps go down. They do two things. The most important thing that they do is that they increase the lift of the aircraft. They change the shape of the wing again and confer a lift. When the flaps go down, just like when the aileron went down, it conferred more lift, so do the flaps. In contrast to the ailerons, where you have a right aileron that goes down when the left aileron goes up, flaps operate the same on both sides. They are actually connected. So they go, the right and left side go up simultaneously, up or down simultaneously. As we slow an aircraft, we are losing the lift conferred by airspeed. We need to still keep the airplane in the air, though, in a controlled fashion, so we lower the flaps. That way we generate more lift at a slower speed than we were able to do without doing this. As you can also get an idea by putting your hand out the window and you feel drag, That's what flaps do also, because that they are lowering into the airflow. They are applying drag to the airplane. I don't know. What is under it?
No, it's traveling part.
To solo an airplane, you have to be 16. To get your license, you have to be 17. But if you're flying with the flight instructor, what's the difference?
How heavy is a normal airplane, the ones that you fly?
Now again, I haven't flown the big, jumbo jets and stuff like that. Those things weigh hundreds of tons, some big number. But let's since we were just talking about Vicki Van Meter, she flew a Cessna 172. Just a brand of airplane, a model of airplane. Anytime you get into an airplane, you always reach for the owner's manual. So that's what this is. How much does it weigh? It weighs something or other, but basically what we call in aviation, we talk about empty weight. And the empty weight of the Cessna 172, which is a 4-seater airplane about the size of your car, it weighs about 1,700 pounds.
Well, what is empty weight?
It means it's empty. There's nobody in it and no fuel. On our way back from the wing to the tail, I thought I'd stop here at the fuselage. Because we're in the rear of the airplane, we call it empennage, but basically it's the fuselage. And I just wanted to tap it. Basically hollow. We have a very simple structure on the inside and skin. In contrast to the wing, if you take the skin off of the wing, you see a lot of structure. In the fuselage, if you took the skin off, there is no structure. The skin is the structure, is the strength of the airplane. Quite fascinating. Well, now we're going to move back to the tail of the airplane and talk about the different parts. We have what seems to be just a kind of flat surfaces back here are also flying surfaces. These are also curved, much like the wing is, because in the tail of the airplane, we want lift to be generated down, and the wing is generated up. And by moving control surfaces, we can go up or down. Ailerons will do roll, and rudder will do yaw. We'll talk about those each one at a time. Stability in an aircraft is conferred not only by its entire structure. There's an airplane going by now. Looks like a twin-engine Beechcraft. Those are interesting airplanes because they have, even though it's a propeller plane, it uses the equivalent of a jet engine, a turbine engine, in contrast to the internal combustion reciprocating engines that we have in aircraft like this, which are very similar to our cars. When you look at an engine in a plane like this, it actually looks like a Volkswagen engine. They are air-cooled. Very few aircraft engines are water-cooled. It's an expense that we simply don't need in aviation. Well, stability. We have a horizontal stabilizer, which is what this structure is, and we have a vertical stabilizer. In addition to that, the real action happens at the surfaces that are controllable by the pilot. They are the elevator and the rudder. If we want to go up, we pull back on the steering wheel or stick. We'll see that a little bit later. And the elevator goes up like this. If you look at this carefully, in the full position like this, you can imagine that you're seeing a wing, an upside-down wing. The curvature of this surface is on the bottom versus the top. What is happening in this situation is more lift is being developed in the down direction than the up direction, causing the tail to go down, which makes the nose go up. And that way we climb. If we want to go down, we push the stick or steering wheel forward, making the elevator go into this position, and we go down. Most of the time, though, in actual flying, the elevator moves very, very little, because once you're going through the medium of air at the 120 miles an hour that this airplane cruises at, you get a lot of forces just with very small deflections of a controlled surface. Next, we'll look at the rudder. The rudder is operated by the foot pedals on the floor. There are two foot pedals, a right one and a left one. When you push the right foot pedal, that moves the rudder in this direction, towards us, so to speak, and that causes lift to the left. So that's how an airplane can be yawed or skidded to the right, by pushing the right rudder. And then, of course, the converse is true by pushing the left rudder. Most of the time, we don't need to use the rudders too much in flying. There is simply so much stability of the aircraft, and most flying experiences do not cover the range of aerodynamics, so you don't need them. However, there are certain times, particularly during climbs, that because of the prop wash of air coming off the propeller, it requires the need for right rudder during climbs. During aerobatics, we use the rudder a lot more. But during regular flying, you don't use the rudder very much, and actually most pilots kind of forget about the rudder. Here we are up at the action end of an airplane that's very similar to the wing. It's called the propeller. When you look at a propeller closely, it's a shape exactly like a wing. It's curved on one side, tends to be flat on the other. The propeller goes around, obviously. In the process, airflow is caused to go over the curved surface of the propeller. As I described over the wing, as air goes over a curved surface, it speeds up, reducing the pressure, causing lift. And therefore, what a propeller is, it's simply a wing that's generating lift straight ahead. And we call that thrust. Thrust is simply the name for lift generated by a propeller. In a helicopter, the propeller is much bigger, and we call that the rotating wing or flying wing. In fact, many people refer to a helicopter as a rotary wing aircraft. And once you can see that all you're dealing with is a plain old flying machine here, it's a flying surface, it's a curved surface, more air, less pressure, generates lift. That's all a propeller is. The engine is simply rotating that propeller. Not all aircraft have engines or propellers. Gliders are, of course, the best example. Gliders only have essentially wings to hold them up. That's all you need. A lot of people feel like they should get nervous or scared when the engine stops or the propeller stops. No need to, because you do not need an engine or a propeller to fly. If the engine stopped in this for some reason, and I must say the most common reason for an engine to stop is when a pilot forgets to put fuel into the gas tanks, but no problem, you can glide in for a landing. The wings develop plenty of lift to glide. This aircraft has a glide ratio of about 7-to-1. What that means, for every mile high you are above the ground, you will glide 7 miles. Well, that's a very common altitude to be flying, 5,000 or even 10,000 feet, 1 or 2 miles above the ground. And so you can easily glide 7 to 14 miles without engine power in this aircraft. If one doesn't panic, you could land in downtown Erie with no problem at all. You may dent the airplane, but there's no reason to get hurt when an aircraft loses power. One simply glides in. It takes a lot of skill of the pilot, perhaps, and it takes a lot of emotional courage, but the aircraft will do what it's told, and it will land perfectly without propeller or engine. While we're here at the airplane, let's talk about steering the airplane just a little bit. You steer the airplane on the ground via the pedals. Talked about the pedals in relation to the rudder. Well, the pedals on the ground operate the nose gear, and pushing the right pedal turns the nose gear to the right, and we go to the right, and vice versa for the left side. So it's as simple as that. Aircraft are much simpler than you think. They are simply aircraft surfaces, wing, elevator, propeller, and just a few movements inside the cockpit will cause the airplane to do what you're telling it to do.
Good afternoon, Erie ATIS Information Tango, 1451 Zulu weather. Clear, visibility 10. Temperature 56, dew point 32. Wind 180 at 11, altimeter 3040. Visual approach runway 24 in use, runway 20 available upon request.
Since we mostly fly an airplane and are looking out the window, I like not to even worry too much about the panel. It's really not the way to fly an airplane. We fly an airplane by flying the airplane. These instruments have nothing to do with flying an airplane. They are simply giving us information. What flies the airplane is, number one, the pilot, number two, the airplane, and in that order. We talked outside the airplane about the various aircraft surfaces, and when I talked about the steering wheel, or a control column, or stick, this is what I was referring to. So, if we want to turn right, I simply steer right. In this position, the left aileron is down, the right aileron is up. Left wing developing more lift than the right wing, causing us to roll to the right and therefore bank to the right. If we want to go up, we pull back on the stick. If we want to go down, we push forward on the stick. It's really that simple. As a pilot, this is really our primary control of the aircraft. In a glider, this is what all you have. Now, since we're in a powered airplane with an engine, we have a few knobs to control the aircraft engine. Again, they're fairly simple. We have a throttle. Instead of using our feet to give the engine gas, we use our hand. For full power, which we use for takeoff, we simply push the throttle in all the way. That makes the engine speed up, go, and we take off. If we want to go down, we pull the power back. In cruise flight, the power is in about 2/3 or 3/4. That will generate about 70% power. So that's the most common thing that the pilot is operating, the throttle. Little difficult to see over here, perhaps, is the mixture. In contrast to cars, which basically fly at the same altitude, ground altitude, aircraft go through a variety of altitudes. As we go higher in the medium of air, there is less of it. As we go higher, there is less air for the engine to burn. And when an engine operates, it mostly is eating air. A little fuel, lots of air. But as air goes down, we need to decrease the amount of fuel going into the engine. So we adjust the mixture. We push the knob in to make the mixture rich, pull it out to lean it. When we shut the airplane down, we don't turn the key, we pull the mixture. Starving the engine of fuel, the engine stops. That's basically all the engine controls most pilots are going to need to worry about. As planes get more advanced, you start to be able to control the propeller pitch and other functions of an aircraft. Well, let's look at this panel and break it down. And if you looked at 100 different aircraft, you would see a recurring theme. Basically, flight-related instruments are right in front of the pilot, radios are in the middle, and auxiliary instruments of much less importance are over on the co-pilot side. Well, initially it looks like you have a lot of bells and whistles and instruments and knobs. But again, they aren't that difficult. We reviewed outside the various aircraft controls. Here we are inside the airplane. And talking about the control stick or steering wheel, here it is. Want to turn right? You turn right. Want to turn left? You turn left. Want to go up? You pull back. You want to go down? You push down. Simple as that to fly an airplane. This airplane is a Cessna 172, a four-seater. 4 people can sit in this airplane along with baggage behind the seats. So it's pretty comfortable. We go about 120 miles an hour in this airplane, so we can get there pretty well. In contrast to driving down the street where we have to stop at red lights or follow a curved street or turn right or turn left at intersections, the easiest way we gain traveling time is to go in a straight line. So that's a neat thing about going any place. If we wanted to go to New York City, we can take off, and I can set a direction that will go straight there. I don't have to deviate from that direction, and that's probably what saves us as much time as our faster speeds. Welcome to my baby. This is the TNT Rebel 300. We've been spending some time talking about aircraft, how they work, how they're constructed, but we haven't talked about the range of aircraft very much, from low performance to high performance. This happens to be the highest performing airplane in the world that one can build. To get higher performing than this, you have to buy a F-15 or an F-14 for $20, $25 million. This costs a lot of money, but a lot less than that as well. I designed and built this aircraft about 4 years ago. There are similarities and dissimilarities with the Cessna that we just reviewed. In terms of how the airplane flies, exactly the same. All aircraft fly the same. You need lift to get off the ground. We develop lift with the wings. I have wings. But what are the differences? In contrast to how aviation started with fabric airplanes, moved into aluminum airplanes, we've actually gone back to fabric. But as the movie The Graduate said, better living through plastics, I basically have a structure here that's using one of the new plastic materials, and that's called Kevlar. Kevlar is the material used in bulletproof vests. And so the entire skin of this aircraft is Kevlar. Starts off with a fabric. I'll show you it in the raw form in just a moment, and laid up in a form, kind of high technology glues, basically. We call them epoxies, but like aviation, we always have to have a big word for things. It's glue. It provides a skin, when it's set up with the glue, that's rock hard. It is also rock strong. The Kevlar is extremely strong, much stronger than any other material given its weight. Let me show you how I got started with this airplane. I said it was made out of fabric, and in fact it is made out of fabric. This is it. This is Kevlar cloth or fabric. You could almost wear it, and like I said earlier, police wear it as a bulletproof vest. But it basically looks like burlap. It kind of feels like burlap, but very, very strong. If you wanted to pull this apart, you simply could not pull it apart. It is extremely strong, way beyond fiberglass, way beyond steel for the weight that exists here. Once you lay it up, it's a term we use when we lay up composite sort of things in epoxies or glues, it looks like this. This is literally the window that I cut out of my fuselage on the side. We'll look at that in just a moment. But that's what it looks like. Very strong. If you hit this as hard as you could with a hammer, you would do nothing to it. It is extremely strong. I built this airplane to withstand plus and minus 20 Gs. The aircraft that we looked at a little while ago was built to withstand plus and minus 4 Gs. Commercial aircraft like a 747 or 727 are built to withstand 3 Gs, 2 to 3 Gs. So in aerobatics we need a lot of strength, and I put a lot of margin in there so I didn't have to worry about that. I showed you the rectangle of Kevlar that I cut out. This is where I got it down here. And what I put in place of that rectangle of Kevlar is simply a piece of Lexan, a high technology plastic that doesn't break either, and that way I can see out of the airplane down near my feet. Huge windows on the sides, both sides, as well as the entire bottom of my cockpit area is also Lexan. So I get a 360-degree view around this way, and because of my large canopy and where I sit high in my canopy, I have a 360-degree view around this way. So in the two primary axes, I have 360-degree views. I see all over. We use that in competition aerobatics to be able to place ourselves in the relatively small aerobatic box that we must stay within to score well. A hammerhead, you pull the airplane, you go straight up, all the way up. At the top of the figure, eventually See, the propeller isn't even as big as the wing, is it? So no way can the propeller generate as much lift as the wing. Eventually, you're going to run out of propeller lift, which we call thrust. So you're going to slow down, slow down, slow down. And just as you get to the top, you hit left rudder, and you simply pivot. Okay? And come straight down and pull up. That's called a hammerhead. In competition, we have to be, we have to fly with precision. Hammerhead is a good quarter loop to go up. In your vertical, everybody says, well, how can anybody judge what a vertical is? But if you folks saw this airplane going straight up, you'd be able to tell immediately if it was going straight up. If it was going up like this, that's not straight up. So you would mark it down. You wouldn't give it a good score in a competition.
This is Red Ribbon Week, and I was wondering how drug and alcohol issues relate to flying and piloting.
There's no way that anybody on drugs could do this figure. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. So one problem about aviation is if you're interested in being drunk or on drugs, you won't be able to do it. You might as well just forget it. Just close that chapter. You're not going to get anywhere into the field. There's just too much involved. So I suppose if one is interested in hanging out, bad parts of the city, and that's what you want for life, maybe it's okay. I don't know. But that's not too exciting. So it's one neat thing about aviation is that you just don't have time for those sort of things. Of course, it's illegal as well. Blood tests and if you ever have an accident and it gets blamed on those kind of things, you're in hot water, and you're in hot water more than other people. And the reason is when you're flying. See, it's one thing to be like, let's say, drunk or on drugs, and to drive through your house. That's one level of bad thing to do. But when you're in an airplane and you're flying over the city of Erie, all those people down there, they don't even know you're up there. There's a tremendous responsibility to go flying.
How did you design your propeller in your airplane?
The propeller on my airplane is the only thing I didn't design, actually. Most propellers are made out of metal. Mine is made out of wood, surrounded with fiberglass. And there's an engineer in Germany that designed my propeller, and so I bought it from him. I wanted to just show you very quickly what it looks like me sitting in the airplane, and to show you that even though I've just been focusing on a variety of differences between this aircraft and other aircraft, there are also similarities. I have instruments. I have an airspeed indicator over here. I have an altimeter, tachometer, and just a few engine instruments. The only different instrument that I have in this airplane that other people don't have is a G meter. That way I'm able to monitor the stresses and strains that I'm putting on the aircraft. Other than that, exactly the same in terms of engine instruments. As a special purpose airplane, I don't need a lot of the radios, and so I have a very simple handheld radio to communicate with the tower people. I don't need the transponder and navigation radios that the other planes have, because I don't use the airplane for cross country. When I do go cross country, I look out the window. I follow roads. It's kind of like a common man's approach to what we call IFR flying. I follow roads. So I can get from here to Florida or Texas or California simply by picking a direction, looking out the window, seeing various landmarks, looking at the chart. Not too difficult. How many airports do you think there are in the United States?
557. I don't know.
That's right. There's only about 567 or 500 airports that the airliners use. But we actually have about 20,000 airports. Commercial aviation is just a small fraction of aviation. Most aviation is what we call general aviation. And there are there's almost 20,000 airports. There's only a few hundred that the airlines actually go in. Two things left in flying. We've covered the aircraft structure and the aerodynamics of flight. The two things left are getting around the skies as well as weather. Here we have one of the various examples of VFR, Visual Flight Rules, aviation charts. I call them maps, but the aviators always like to have fancy words. It looks complicated at first, just like the aircraft panel did. But like the aircraft panel, let's divide and conquer. Up to the top of the map is Canada. Then there's Lake Erie. Erie is right here, the yellow. And all the yellow that you see on the map refers to cities. You can see that most of the ground is not a city, and so it's green. Over here, to the left, is Cleveland. To the south is Pittsburgh. And we all know that Pittsburgh is, what, about 150 miles away. So in this chart, we're able to see a rather long distance, all within the one view there. And on over to the right, to the northeast, is Buffalo. A couple other features about these charts. They are topographic charts. They give us some idea of altitude by different colors. Over to the southeast are where the Appalachian Mountains begin, and we can, when we look closely, start to get an idea of what the ground altitude is above sea level. To me, the most interesting feature of these charts is to show you the number of airports that exist. Most folks only know about the big city airports, Erie Airport, or Burke Lakefront in Cleveland, or Pittsburgh International Airport. But those big airports are relatively just a small proportion of what total airports are. In fact, there are almost 20,000 airports in the United States. Less than 500 of them are commercial airports. And the commercial airports are shown here in blue. The blue airports have control towers. The magenta airports, these round magenta circles with a slash in the middle indicating a runway, are uncontrolled airports. There's no radio required to get into those airports. Across the United States, the vast majority of airports do not require radios, are uncontrolled. The closest example we have of an uncontrolled airport is Erie County Airport out towards Wattsburg. The other feature, simply to point out, kind of hard to see unless you have the map in front of you, are what we call Victor Airways. These are the highways in the sky. They are the preferred routes for commercial traffic. For example, if you take off from Erie, you can get places on these Victor Airways which go directly to what we call VORs. These are the radios that exist on the ground that help us navigate from point to point. And so we can get around in a zigzag fashion following the Victor Airways going to the VORs. An even better way to fly, though, is going straight someplace. And so if we just pick up a heading and we look at various reference points, it could be a 4-lane highway, could be a river, could be a city, could be one of the airports, we can fly straight to our destination. Well, that's maps. The last thing about aviation, of course, is weather. One of the more interesting features of weather, and it's one of the reasons I got involved. I always wanted to know about weather. Becoming a pilot, one has to become essentially a meteorologist. In contrast to driving a car, where all we really care about is the road condition, in aviation we care about the air and weather. We're flying in weather, not underneath it. And so it's very important to a pilot and very interesting to pilots to learn about weather. And you'll learn as much about weather as any meteorologist on television. So very fascinating. Make a lot of decisions of go, no-go in flying, purely based on the weather. I hope you've enjoyed flying into your future. We hope that you learned a great deal in our today's flight and review of what aviation is all about, how an airplane is made, how it flies, how we get around. We just missed the weather a little bit. Next time we're going to cover aviation futures. Futures. That was an interesting slip there because we want to cover the careers. And the careers in aviation go way beyond pilots. We're going to talk a lot about details about that and different ways to advance in aviation. There are thousands of opportunities of different kinds of jobs in aviation. And in contrast to a lot of other areas, aviation is easy to get into, and it's fun. And you learn a lot, too. Get to go places. So I'm Tom Teat for Milcreek School District. Fly into your future. See you next time.